Hello everybody, welcome to Crafty Soup. My name is Misty. It is time for the third challenge, which is always a sketch challenge over at the Counterfeit Kit challenge blog. So here is our sketch, and I loved almost everything about this sketch, so I'm going to repeat it very closely. However, I am going to add a washi tape technique to this, which I didn't intend to do, but it ended up that way. So let's dive in. All right, here is my photo, and this is kind of a fun story for me because I helped a friend with a quilting event where you collect quilt blocks from various quilting shops, and then eventually you have enough to put together a project. And she asked me to collect them from my town because she lives a couple hours away from me, and it was really fun. I didn't know we had so many quilting shops in my town, so that was exciting. And since I sew, not quilt, but sew, it's a new place to explore fabrics, so that was fun. At any rate, I have my counterfeit kit here since this is a counterfeit kit challenge. I am picking papers mostly based on them being scraps, although I did pick that green circly paper, and we'll talk about that. It kind of reminded me of a watery theme, which is the theme of the quilt fabric from these blocks, even though the quilting material is largely blue, which you'll see me pull in a little bit later, some blue. I did go with kind of that watery theme by choosing that green bubble pattern. So that was the reason behind that. I really like this stripe pattern to be that main block. And because I only have one photo, I'm going to narrow my central block there that you can see on the sketch how it's more of a square. And I'm okay with changing it up that way. I liked a lot of things about the sketch. I liked the tag and where the title was, and the twine around the heart, and the journaling block. So there's a lot of things I liked here, and I'm going to replicate a lot of those things. But first up is trying to get the math right to get these upper squares sorted out. That took me a little while. I cut most of that out, but in the end, it looks good. Now, when I was going through my kit, I did grab washi tape first thing because that was something I stashed in my kit wanting to use, and so far I haven't really put it to use. And so since it was sitting on my desk as I was looking for papers and things, I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm going to use it. And that was partially inspired also because I narrowed my main block on my layout. That left extra white space, which felt a little too awkward, so I wanted to fill that in with something a little subtle but also interesting. And when I had my washi tape sitting there in front of me, I totally thought of this weaving technique that I've shared on a washi tape technique video in the past. And I'm like, yes, this is the perfect use for it because that weaving technique kind of reminds me of quilts. And so I'm going to leave all of this in real time as I work this piece. I won't show you from beginning to end, but I will show you enough of the technique that if you want to do this, you can. So I start with vertical strips, and I am tearing off horizontal strips that are going to go about as wide as my project. And when I thought I was going to start from the bottom of this project, but I decided for camera's sake, I better start at the top. Otherwise, I would have kind of sized those little tabs at the top a little bit better. At any rate, it's going to be fine. I do put an anchor strip across that to help hold everything down. Now you can do this weaving technique with cardstock, but what I like about doing it with washi tape is, one, the washi tape is a little translucent and you can actually see the layers in between the layers of weaving. And also because washi tape is self-adhesive, it has some ease of use to it now, assuming you can get it unstuck from your surface. And I have a tip for that. If you fold down one end, that will leave a little tab that won't stick to your surface, and then that'll make an easy place to grab it when you keep working. But as you see, I'm curling this back and tacking it up, and that horizontal tape that I put helps the washi tape stop in a linear motion, so that when I go to put this piece across, it is nice and straight and even. So I'm just folding up every other weave of this, and this is with any weaving you do. You fold up every other one, tuck in a long strip, and then you fold those weaves back down, and I'm adding those little handles as I fold these ones down so that as I keep working this piece, those little handles will be there for me, and that one's already there, so that gets folded down. And then I'm going to lift up the opposite pieces, and if you have a bigger weave that you're doing, this will take more time, but I did want to keep this smaller and subtle. And then I love this washi tape because you can just kind of curl it back on itself, tack it down so it's not going to flop on you. Cardstock tends to want to fold back down and get in your way, and if you try to fold it out of the way, then it gets creases in it. So washi tape is super forgiving for this technique. All right, I'm getting the little handles put on the opposite pieces there. And then I'm going to keep working with my next piece of washi tape. So I did pre-cut those vertical strips so that I would have them ready to go, and that would speed up the process as I go. I'm going to work around the circle as I choose my strip, so I can look at which strip I have here and then just move around counterclockwise in my circle to choose my next strip, and that kind of helps me keep track of things. So I've got 2 horizontal strips now, so I fold my vertical strips back down, and I'm ready to do the opposite strips folded up for the next row. All right, so I think that gives you enough of an idea about how this technique works. So let's go ahead and jump to the finished piece. All right, I am here with that finished piece. I am just tearing off those little tabs so that I can have a clean, well, not a clean edge, but the same edge from the top to the bottom of that kind of torn washi tape look. Now I'm going to cut this piece in half so that I can split it behind my block. And since the block's covering up the middle of the page, I don't feel like I need to cover up the middle of the page with washi tape. So I'm okay with just cutting it and moving it. So doing this on a grid mat is nice and helpful because I can use the grids to kind of count where I need to cut it to be about in half. And then the grid lines also kind of help me get a straightish cut across the middle. And that will help me divide this up across the page. All right, that craft knife will also be helpful when you peel this up off the mat. Now you can do this weaving technique directly on your project because I wasn't sure that I really wanted to do this, how I wanted to go about it, I decided to do it on my craft mat. Plus it's easier to kind of show you the process. So that's why I did it on my craft mat. And if you do want to do it off to, on a separate piece here in case something goes wrong, then you can use this craft knife to kind of help lift up the bottom edges of things without tearing the washi tape. And then at that point, it's usually sturdy enough to be able to lift it up in one piece. If you are working with cardstock, you're probably going to want to add a dab of glue under the junction of each weave of your cardstock so that you can lift it up and move it around and not have it fall apart on you because it can just kind of sproing and fall apart. So that's another benefit of the washi tape. And you can see it's a little delicate to handle the washi tape, but it does hold up okay. And I'm just going to eyeball where it should go, and then I will just start sticking it down. Now, I did get some wrinkles in this as I was going, and that's kind of one of the detriments of doing it this way. But if you're careful, you can gently lay it down and you wouldn't have that problem. But I was okay with the wrinkles because we're talking about quilting fabric. Fabric has wrinkles in it, so I thought that texture was actually kind of a happy accident to add to this subtle little background grounding idea here. So I did get the other piece in place, and now you can see it's a very subtle technique behind this, but it does help ground everything and bring it all together. So I'm very glad I did that, and I'm ready to move on to other parts of the project. If we take a look at that sketch again in the upper right quadrant, there is that tag as well as the title. So I'm going to create my own tag out of the back side of this piece of paper, which I think was the back of the stripes. That one right there, I think was the back of the stripes. I'm not quite sure. I'm going to make a little tag hole out of some plain cardstock that I used in this kit for another project. And because I'm using that little bit of neutral cardstock, I want to add that to other places on my layout. And I think that will make a great place for my journaling. So I'm going to make my journaling tag out of that. Now it is on the sketch, it is a tag. It does have a hole punched in the bottom. It's a rectangular hole, so it's not really a traditional tag, but I am going to reproduce that in another way, and we'll see that in a moment. In the meantime, I am going to go ahead and work on tabs because that upper quadrant did have a tab in it. I put mine off to the side, and then the bottom of the sketch had a scalloped border peeking out, and I'm going to reproduce that with more tabs since 1, I have the tab punch out, and 2, it adds continuity to everything. So here is where I'm working on the journaling tag, and I thought if I put multiple tag holes in it, then I could weave ribbon through it to further that fiber look that was going on other parts of the layout. It doesn't work out, but we'll get to that. So I switched back to focusing on the original tag, and I had a hard time deciding on placement. I decided to let it hold my title instead of being just a decorative element above the title. And then I've got my multi-font title going on, and then we'll have to fix that one letter that was supposed to be an E, but I had to Frankenstein an F into an E. And then I'm finishing up my journaling tag by giving it some journaling lines, and I move on to adding the fibers. That was definitely one of the elements that drew me to this sketch because I did tuck a lot of ribbons and things in my kit. Now here's where I had intended to weave, and I realized the odd number of holes does not make for even weaving, so I'm just going to cover up that central hole so I have an even look to that border. And I didn't trim it off yet because I wasn't sure I entirely liked it, but I will let that sit there until I get other parts done. So I am working on just 3 embellishment clusters. I am reproducing the heart with the twine underneath it, and using a bit of foam tape will help that heart sit on top of the twine. Now I'm trying to tie twine around a pointy edge of another heart, and that angle makes the twine want to slip off, so I wrestle with it and then I glue it down so that it will stay put, and I put that up there in my top cluster. Now those little fibers are too long, so I will end up cutting those off. Oh, here's where I decide that I am going to just stick with that pink ribbon, and then that offcut I try to tuck other places, and then eventually I decide that it will make a good addition underneath the rest of my title, because I did offset my title up to the top of the tag thinking that I would put something there, and this ribbon is that something that turned out to work there. So I think I've got this ribbon or this green twine going on in other places, so I'm going to make sure it's in all of my clusters, and by cutting off that upper one, it helps reduce its impact on the big bow on my title so that it's not drawing too much attention, and it gives me little offcuts to use on my bottom cluster. And then a little bit of a detail with rounding those corners to match the tabs on my journaling tag up there, and that completes this layout. So if you were with me on Friday where I struggled through my layout and didn't like it, this was the opposite. Everything seemed to come together nicely, and I'm very happy with the layout, and I enjoyed using that washi tape technique. So that does wrap up everything for today, and if you want to see more ideas on using this sketch and join the fun over at the Counterfeit Kit Challenge, I will leave all the links for you down below so that you can come join us and we can see your work as well. I should be back later this week with at least one more video, so until then, have an artful day.